I'm Tim, the brand weaver, and this is Branding for Breweries, the podcast that helps you grow your brewery, build a better brand, and connect with more drinkers. Each week, I'm joined by the brightest minds in the beer world, sharing practical tips to help your brewery stand out and sell more beer. Let's get stuck in. What up, 24-hour party people? 'Tis I, Tim the Brand Weaver, and as always, you are listening to Branding for Breweries, as the intro says far better than I do, the show that brings the brightest minds in the brewing world to help your brewery thrive, survive, and generally be as awesome as it possibly can be. And this week, my little nerd boy fan heart is geeking out because not only are we talking beer, we are talking comic books. I stumbled across a wonderful brewery a couple of years ago called Lost in Town. And what makes them so special and what made me want to reach out to them and get a member of the team on the show is they're not like any normal brewery who are just doing some great beer. They've tied it all together with a wicked comic book. And I thought this is a fantastic story for everyone to listen to and really get inspired by, because you might have your own passions that you want to bring to life and merge with your brewing passions to create something that's truly unique for your brewery to stand out and engage with a completely different consumer base. So that is enough of me rabbling on. Let's bring the awesome Max into the room and we're going to have a chat. Max, how you doing, mate?
Hi, Tim. How are you? What a fantastic intro. God, I feel like the MacGyver of the beer world right now.
I mean, let's hope you live up to the tale then.
Yeah, fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
So, Max, let's get stuck in with this. We don't need to hear the full story about Lost in Town, dude. But what I really want to get to the heart of nice and quickly is the noir-inspired comic book that ties this whole brewery together. Where did that come from? How did you land on this idea, man?
So, kind of going back to it, I mean, the craft beer world sort of exploded in the early 2000s. And I think very much thanks to, Camden Town Brewery and Beavertown, it became such a commercial staple in the beer community. Now, whilst most going to a lot of beer festivals and craft pubs / shops, is that a lot of brands had overly similar branding with elements of punk rock, pop art, and loud, colorful branded labels and cans. That's when we decided to research old school methods of branding for not just alcohol beverages, just beverages in general. But I think something that really caught our eye was some of the classic Aperol, champagne, and even some of the old Budweiser beer posters that you saw in the 40s and 50s. And you now kind of see them hanging in trendy pubs, cafes, and art stores. And it almost seemed like a bit of a lost art in the craft beer world, which is when we felt like we struck gold. The beauty of having a gorgeous, like 40s, 50s sort of swing singer or a suited mafia-esque character to advertise your beverage or your, consumable, it not only allowed them to differentiate from having, like it gives them a bit more of an identity. It kind of adds a character-esque story to the product itself rather than just advertising that it's a beer. Another drive for me personally, and I'm going to sort of get a bit nerdy now. I've always been a huge fan of the Fallout video games. The main aspect of that game being exploration. And I was always so intrigued by the posters with the Vault Boy mascot on it for the in-brand product Nuka-Cola, or the like Vault Boy martial arts tutorial posters where you had these really character-driven kind of branded ideas in a game, but they just look so classic and cool. So we finally realized, let's go against the grain. Instead of pop arty labels, let's channel our inner like Orson Welles, our Alfred Hitchcock, and bring back those mysterious yet sexy silhouettes, stick them on our beer labels, because not only does the beer needs to taste great, but I think it needs to look great. And I think from a consumer perspective, you want to look cool holding the beer can that you're, having at your mate's house party or at that event or at that club or ordering it at the bar or something. And so I think that kind of whole like monochrome, beautiful character with a bit of splash of color to kind of accent the beer just worked really well for us. And yeah, me and my business partner, we love the kind of noir-esque branding of things in the past, and why not bring it to the future?
I think it's a phenomenal and quite a unique way to approach your branding. And ironically, it's not kind of like it almost feels like it's an obvious approach that you should take, going, well, what are people not using right now? What are people not doing? And we should probably double down on that in many ways. But the fact that you had that kind of literature inspired piece there, that storytelling all bundled into one, is phenomenal. Like, I've got a copy of the comic here, so guys, do check it out. It's wicked stuff. But I suppose for people listening, Max, you went down one particular route, but there must be many other routes that breweries could take and still create quite a unique identity, a unique narrative. Like, did you have any structures or any pointers that you might give other breweries when looking for a more of a, I suppose, niche element to stand out with?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and again, I'm going to sound like a bit of a nerd here, but I think it's really good to pay attention to the video game and movie businesses and see what they are doing to please crowds. The reason I say that is because, like everyone in those respective fields, they're looking to create a product or service for the masses. So it's meant to please many people. The movie making sector is particularly interesting because after looking what has been coming out recently, you can see the trend of, nostalgia. People subconsciously miss the way things used to be, so to speak. And that can be translated by all of the biopic movies that have been coming out recently, all the new projects that are coming out from franchises like Star Wars with all the TV shows on Disney, Lord of the Rings with the new TV show that's on Prime. And the same can be said about, the video game industry too. They're constantly releasing new Star Wars games and like Lord of the Rings themed games and things like that. Now, my point to kind of, get back to beer is that if you're looking to get into the business, don't try and reinvent the wheel, so to speak. There is certainly a space, I think, for a fruit beer or like a peanut butter Oreo imperial stout. But I think if you nail a really good lager and a really good pale ale and maybe even a pilsner, I think you have the recipe for the perfect foundation to create something big. It's just about finding, I think, what works not only for you, but what you think people will like. And I think if you just really drive that idea and just nail the recipe down and tweak it where you can, depending on the feedback you get, I think that's just the best way to find your niche. But I think, just look into pop culture. Pop culture and craft beer are so overly similar in terms of the community that's involved in them. The ideas that you see coming out of other different industries can be applied to not only beer, but just any kind of consumable product, really. And that's really how we found our niche. I think we just kind of got lucky with, I guess, the obviousness of applying comic book culture into craft beer culture, because there's so many elements already in craft beer that relate to comic books. So that was kind of that's how we found our niche. But yeah, I guess the long story short is just be a giant nerd like myself.
There we go. Just be a nerd. That's what people can take from this. That's perfect. But I'm wondering, like, how did you stress test it? Because there's so many touch points for a brewery. You obviously have your cans, you've got your merch, you've got your website. Did you go through and go, can we realistically see this being applied across a brand? Did you have to check it at any point to make sure it was working?
Yeah, so I think kind of in the early days of when we came up with the idea, which was just under 2 years ago, this is going to sound a bit funny, but I think the best way to do it is obviously come up with a good name, and then obviously test pilot a few recipes and a few different cans and bottles and stuff. And then what I like to do is if I went to a friend's house party or if I went to like an event where you could bring booze or something, I would basically bring a really poorly labeled bottle of our beer. And then usually I would say, hey, I just started working with this new brewery. This is their beer. Let me know your honest opinion. The reason why I wouldn't say it's mine is because naturally people will be biased and just say that it's good, even if it tastes absolutely atrocious. And yeah, I think just kind of, start with your nearest and dearest, because they'll be pretty brutally honest. And then I think branch out to friends of friends and things like that. And then it's such a good way to get really honest feedback without having to go to complete strangers and try and sell them something, et cetera, et cetera. And I think once you kind of pull in enough ideas, it could be 20 ideas, it could be 30, et cetera, however many you want, you'll kind of know from there how to tune either the name of the brewery. Some people could say that it's complete rubbish, or it just doesn't work, or this lager tastes a little bit weird, or this tastes a bit too hoppy, or this tastes a bit too fruity, maybe change that. And then you kind of go from there. And then when you finally hit the nail on the head, then you go, well, this is actually my brand. And then everyone who gave you a horrible opinion will probably apologize, but it's kind of the best way to kind of stress test the idea. I think just kind of do it in secret, test it with your friends and your family, and then test it with friends of friends. And then that's the best way to kind of get brutally honest opinions without them being biased towards you. And, because people will, even your best mate will be like, if you tell them it's yours, they'll be like, oh man, it's so good, even if it's rubbish. Because I would probably do the same.
Yeah, we're intrinsically meant to be kind to people that we know, aren't we? So
yeah.
I completely get it. Did you do the same? So that was predominantly with the liquid. You talked about stress testing the name as well, but what about with the artwork and the characters and the packaging? Did you go through variations of that, or were you quite lucky and you just landed on that style?
So we initially did a very sort of rough, basic design of a kind of Alfred Hitchcock style sort of poster for the lager, which is the first beer that we launched. And it was done by a very good friend of ours. She did a fantastic job and kind of, I think, pushed us in the right direction. But we kind of were like, okay, I think we need to elevate it a little bit. So we kind of went down the marketing company route. So showed it to a few different people. Everyone loved the idea. And then we landed with a great company and they kind of elevated it a bit more. And then we kind of did almost like a before and after pic of this is what happens when you take this 30-day diet. and then you get the beautiful results afterwards. So yeah, that was kind of the way that we stress tested it. I think we kind of had that early concept, showed it to a few people. At this point, obviously, friends of ours knew that it was our brand. And I think if you look at the comparison of the old one, the like independent.
Oh, I think we've lost Max. Let's give Max a minute and see if he can join us again though.
Tim, I think I'm back.
You're frozen on my screen. There you go. You're back, bud. Sorry. Lost you for a bit there. It's okay.
We're back. Sorry about that.
No, it happens. This is the fun of the live stream. So very quickly, bud, you said you went from a friend of yours helping you with the first style. You then went the agency route, did the before and after 30-day challenge, as it were. And that's when we started to lose you in the breakup, bud. Could you tell us a little bit more about the next phase?
Yeah, so kind of, I think we had that initial design and then we showed it to these wonderful guys. They found us a slightly more sort of versed illustrator, so to speak. And then that person very kindly kind of really elevated it, kind of made it look like a proper film noir style of poster. We kind of went through a few different options at the time of what would look good. So we initially had just a pure silhouette, but then we were like, let's add some more characteristics to the face. Let's add like a bit more facial structure. And then that was when, because the idea was to always do a comic book at some point, but we just needed to kind of give the labels as much character as possible to be like, almost like a teaser trailer to that project, so to speak. So it's like, oh, here's this mysterious character. You can't actually see his full face, but it kind of teases that whole, he's a gritty detective, he is the hero of the story, but there is something behind that shadow that will be revealed soon. And we kind of did that with all of our labels. We did it with our Heartbreaker Pale Ale, who's our femme fatale in the story. You know, you had this really beautiful silhouette of like a 40s, 50s sort of singer who performs at the local club. But again, hiding those facial structures. But you see like this really gorgeous, sexy silhouette. And it kind of creates that mystery to it. And then the Kingpin was the same. You had this really like big Russian mobster, villainous looking character. And I think the illustrators that we worked with for these labels, they kind of nailed it on the head of like, you want to know more about that character because of that, the use of shadowing and stuff like that. And it creates that want for the comic book project whenever we were advertising it in the early days of Lost in Town.
And so this is an interesting point, because knowing you had the idea, the ambition to do the comic book, and you had, to me, it sounds like pieces of the puzzle already, but maybe not the full puzzle at that point. So you had the core range, as it were, the comic book that then came out. And did that then enable you to kind of start to string it all together, or did it reveal more of what you could do with the brand once the comic book was there?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because I think usually it goes the other way around. Normally you would have the comic book first, and then you would have the, you know, subsequent products from that come out afterwards. I think the nice thing with us doing the beer first and then the comic book is that the comic book now allows us to develop the brand in so many different ways. And that can be, you know, new characters that are introduced into the comic book can then subsequently become, you know, beers in the brewery that we make, whether they're special edition beers or core beers. But I think the reason we took that route is we always wanted to have 3 core beers that are constantly on rotation. So we have the Hard Ace Lager, the Heartbreaker Pale Ale, and the Kingpin Pilsner. So you've got your 3 main sort of character archetypes. You've got the protagonist, the villain, and then the femme fatale. And the great thing with having this comic book platform now is that, you know, it can be very seasonal in terms of when you introduce certain characters. So obviously it's winter at the moment, so it's a bit dark and gloomy and a bit miserable outside. So you could kind of relate that more to things like dark lagers, strong IPAs, or even like a stout or an imperial stout, which would kind of more closely relate to a villain character. So if we introduced a sidekick to Victor Krotonsky, who is the Kingpin Pilsner, that would then turn into one of those 3 types of beers. And then as it gets a bit warmer throughout the year, you know, your spring, your summer, you're looking at making more things like fruity pale ales, or like maybe a bit more floral, or like Belgian style beers, like kind of like light wheaty beers, things like that. Maybe even just like a classic fruit beer. Although I'm pretty sure Jubel kind of control that market, so I don't really know if we're gonna run into making a fruit beer anytime soon. But yeah, that's kind of, it allows us to develop the brand quite nicely in turn with the comic book, and it gives us so many ways to kind of tease either products, or like you can do it the other way around, where we introduce a beer out of nowhere and then being like coming soon in chapter 3 of volume 2.
Okay, because I was going to say, like, do you have to be super organized? Because not only are you then planning a beer release, but it's the next chapter of the comic book that's got to coincide with it. Like, are you having to plan 6 to 9 months down the line, or is it a little bit more sporadic and ad hoc?
No, I'd probably say that it's very much, you just have to plan in advance. I mean, so the way that we're going to do the graphic novel is we want to do a volume every single year. And we're looking to do around 10 volumes, so around 60 chapters. And that does takes a fair bit of planning. But the nice thing is that now that we have the foundation with volume 1, it's actually a lot easier to continue writing and add new characters and things like that. Obviously, you just have to make the lore all make sense, which I think is the tricky part. You know, it's like you don't want to leave any plot holes or anything like that. But again, the great thing with having this comic book platform is you can also do spin-offs. If we're doing like a limited edition run of, say, like a dark imperial stout, for example, where you see like a sidekick of Victor Krotonsky do like his own archetype and maybe try and take over the capital, which is the name of the world in our comic book. You know, you can do like a 2 to 3 chapter run of that and just focus on that for the beer release, if that makes sense.
It certainly does, Bud. And the other thing I want to touch on is how Yeah, I think when I reached out to you, you guys had just finished a stint at ComicCon, which I think is a phenomenally unique location for a brewery to be popping up in. Like, how did that all come about? How did you realize that was a really great market opportunity for you in the brewery?
Yeah, so I mean, early doors when we first launched, every kind of festival that we did do, which was all beer sort of focused, virtually every customer we spoke to, they were like, guys, I love your branding. It reminds me a lot of Sin City and Watchmen sort of combined, or it reminds me of the LA Noire video game that came out a few years ago. And whenever we would advertise that we're doing a comic book, pretty much everyone, I mean, we always planned on doing it, but everyone told us to go and do it at Comic-Con. And so we got in touch with the guys at MCM who do the Comic-Con XL. They absolutely loved the idea. And it was a really big leap of faith of us, to be honest, to kind of do a non-beer festival as a beer brand. So we booked our space. And from day one in October, we had a queue as long as you could see. You know, people loved the concept. I think it's the whole thing of like, not only can you read about this character, but you can drink the beer that the character is based off of. So it adds that level of immersion that I don't think you really see that often in craft beer, even in comic books, really. Because, you know, like I was saying earlier, often in times you'd have the comic book come first and then the product would come out afterwards. So if we were to go the other route and just go straight to Comic-Con and just have this comic book and then be like, oh, we're actually making this beer that's based off of the comic book, I think it was quite a nice pedestal for us to go the other way around and being like, hey, we made this beer first, but we had these beautiful labels. We've made these characters into a story-driven comic book that is all about beer. It's all film noir. It's very Alfred Hitchcock. And I think, you know, going to craft beer festivals again, the similarities of, you know, comic book fans and craft beer fans, it's almost identical because there's so much pop culture in craft beer alone, you know, without having any elements of comic books. Because if you look at some of the, I mean, my favorite thing to do at these craft beer festivals is to look at all the beer labels. They're all so like intricate and there's so much detail in them and they're all very character driven, you know, whether it's a pop arty thing of an eagle on a motorbike for like a hazy IPA, for example, or you. Oh, I think I'm back.
Third time's a charm, bud. We're good. I picked up the words eagle on a motorbike, which it got me intrigued, although I didn't quite hear what everything else was that you said around the sides.
Yeah. No, so like, I mean, yeah. So like, when you go to these craft beer festivals, you see these beautifully intricate labels. You know, whether it be, like I said, an eagle on a motorbike, or you'll see like a Norse god themed beer, and it's like, you know, there's so many elements that are taken from pop culture, whether that be video games or Greek mythology or things like that, and they're applied to beer. And so it's like, it just made sense for us to do Comic-Con, and I think we just really found we pretty much found our exact demographic, which is people that like to, you know, read a comic book or something and have a beer with it, or just, you know, play some video games all night and have a few beers while you're doing it and stuff like that. Because I love doing that. So, you know, it all kind of like fell in place really, really nicely. And that's pretty much how we found our exact demographic.
And I'm curious, what's that done for kind of like loyalty and retention, knowing that people are going, well, we've got more chapters coming out, there's more, you know, more of the story to learn. Have you got people who are more actively engaged in the brand now because of it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Comic-Con gave us like almost 1,000 new followers on our Instagram, which was great. It kind of, I think the shock and awe of us being quite a new idea in the craft beer space is what kind of helped us explode into it really, really nicely. We've had a ton of people order the graphic novel online because we're releasing every single chapter digitally. We have like an ace tier package on there where you can get every chapter sent to you digitally every month until the end of volume 1. And I think it's just like, it's that level of immersion. I think, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think it's what makes people want to kind of get more invested and involved. We're not just selling a beer. We're trying to sell a new world to you and try and get you involved in more than just, hey, try our lager, or hey, try the lager, and then you can read about the lager in this, hopefully what they think greatly crafted comic book. And so I think, yeah, the retention has been amazing, and sort of sky is the limit for us, really.
Dude, that is phenomenal. And you said about obviously the subscription that you've got where you can get the digital comics, which is again a really unique element and offering from a brewery. But I know you guys have got games you can buy on the website. I've seen when you popped up at festivals, you've got kind of more immersive displays. Like how do you map that out? What's the strategy behind like expanding the experience of the Lost in Town brand?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a fun one to address because, I mean, there's so much you can do with a film noir background, and the options are pretty much endless. I mean, we have a lot of stuff in the works. I mean, for example, we have quite a famous web series on our Instagram called Brew IQ, where we discuss like different facts and different sort of legendary things about the beer industry and like famous beer stories and things like that. So we're in the process of doing a Brew IQ app where you can basically, it'll be out in about a month's time. You can sign up to the app and you do these sort of pub quiz, detective themed quizzes through the app to earn things like points and like discount codes for the website. And then you can also, there'll be a bit of I guess like a gambling aspect to it where you can like pitch in like £1 against another player and, challenge them in different quizzes. So it's almost like becoming a bit of a detective, so to speak, through the app, figuring out clues from the quizzes and everything and tying it all together to get a high score on the leaderboard, and you get prizes subsequently.
Very cool. And so did that idea come from going, the education piece is the important bit, or did you want to go, let's help people become their own detective, and wouldn't it be nice if we worked in the educational angle? Like what came first?
So, I mean, when we initially did the Brew IQ sort of segment, obviously educational content, it can be very hit or miss as a brand because, I think as a consumer, if you hear educational, you're like, oh, I don't really want to learn anything. I just want to drink some beer, right? But then I think the way that we did it is that we always did like really funny facts. So like it'll be something about like the world's strongest beer, or like one of our latest videos was about the bar in Raleigh in North Carolina that serves like 369 craft beers on tap, all about like different types of ingredients and brewing processes. Like there's the whole thing of where they're saying the rule of thumb came from, which actually came from the beer industry because you would test the temperature with your thumb back in the day when you didn't have thermometers and whatnot. And then the whole kind of, so to tie in that becoming a detective aspect, another thing we're working on is a scavenger hunt via our Instagram around London, where we're going to hide QR codes around famous landmarks in London. And if you scan those, you'll get prizes and different discount codes, things like that. Some freebies will be sent to your door. It's just a way for us to kind of give back to the community, but try and immerse them into that whole detective noir-esque world that we're trying to create. That's based off of London. So
fantastic, mate. I love how having this, alternative route and different bit of narrative really opens up a brewery's opportunities for way to engage consumers, like build these experiences. I think it's amazing. I suppose one big thing that a lot of breweries would want to know listening to this, and who might be listening now or in the future, is, has it given you an advantage when it comes to the pitch? Like trying to get into newer, more traditional venues, does it give you an angle, an advantage in any way?
Yeah, I'd say it would. I mean, the main thing I think that really helps us as a brand is particularly our branding. So obviously, as I said earlier, we went very monochrome, but like very nice with these like mysterious silhouettes. And the good thing about whenever we've been in a new pub, for example, is that, from being there on launch days and stuff like that, people are so interested by the label because it sticks out a lot more than, the other colorful brands. And I think it makes you more curious as a consumer, being like, oh, that Heartbreaker Pale Ale, I like the look of that label. Let me try that. And the great thing about that is that, when I walk into a pub or a shop or something and I show them the cans, almost everyone is immediately interested, being like, wow, these cans look incredible. And then luckily the beer tastes great as well. So that's also a driver, which is great. But yeah, I definitely say it's a visual thing. I mean, people love the look of our cans, and like, you know, we recently did a bottle line that's a little bit more simplistic and minimalistic, but still has elements of that film noir-esque branding. And I think that's also helped. But yeah, obviously I think the core takeaway from that is not only do you need to make the beer look good, but you need it to taste good as well. That's also the main driver. And I think once you kind of sell it visually, because that's the main thing, right? When you see something, you're not trying it, you're like, oh, that looks good, let me try it. And then you try it, and then if it's good, then you're almost hooked from sip number 1 to sip number 30 later on in the evening.
And so you've got the look, which like people go, I like the look of that. You got the taste, I like the taste. Do you then even have to expand on, hey, yeah, there's a story behind all of this. There is the comic, there's the narrative, or is that only if people like dive into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, because a lot of the new customers that we gained from ComicCon, they weren't actually massive beer fans. So we kind of had that. We had the different direction of, we had craft beer fans who loved the beer first, and then they read the comic book, and then, they kind of fell in love with both aspects. And then we had the people at Comic-Con who sort of came up, just had a quick read of the chapter 1 that we released. And then they were like, oh, if you like the comic book, we have tasters of our Hard Ace Lager, the Kingpin, the Heartbreaker. You can try, it sounded a bit weird when we said it, but you can try the characters that you're reading about. And I think that really I think that helped. I mean, we also had some fantastic cosplay actors there at Comic-Con, which kind of elevated that immersion. So we had the Heartbreaker there. We had Johnny Ace, the Hard Ace detective. It was a little difficult to find a Kingpin character with that sort of build. So we didn't have a Kingpin. But me and my business partner, Maxime, we were pretending to be the Kingpin, stuff a pillow under the shirt, pretend to be a Russian mobster. But yeah, I mean, I think kind of that whole crossworld thing of like, you just have two different elements that really help one another. But I think they just tie together so nicely, then that's what's really helped us, to be honest.
It makes perfect sense. I was talking to Rich over at Osset, and obviously they've got their metal band collaborations, and much like you brought comic book fans into your world who then like the beer, their metal band collabs do exactly the same thing, where they're not even big beer fans, but they like the band, and so naturally they want to try it and taste it. So I can see a lot of overlap there. So Max, tell me about the future for Lost in Town. You've got this wonderful brand world. It inspires and encourages so much growth, but what does that look like for you in the upcoming year to 2 years? Like, what's happening with the brand?
I mean, so there's a lot of stuff in the plans. So for example, this year we're looking to open a pub in London. That's going to be very 40s, 50s themed in terms of aesthetic and things like that. We're looking to open something around November. It's very hush-hush right now because there's nothing in the books. We haven't found a site yet, but we're looking to open a pub of our own rather than a tap room. I think just having a bit more immersion in terms of a pub really elevates that kind of aspect of our brand, transport yourself to the 40s, 50s lifestyle in London. So that's what we're going for. And then I think the main driver for us, this is very pipeline, but we're really hoping to develop the graphic novel into an animated show at some stage. That would kind of be the next really big step for us via that graphic novel idea. And just kind of, I think that'll tie in the project perfectly. So I said we were going to do around sort of 10 volumes, so 60 chapters. And I think we'd probably start approaching studios at around volume 5.
Amazing. That is so cool. I love the pub route, that kind of speakeasy, the knock on the door, say the coded password.
Yes, well, that is the plan.
Dude,
we'll have a speakeasy in the pub.
And it ties in like kind of the escape room vibe, and it's that experiential piece again, isn't it? It's so much more than just sitting down to have a beer. Oh, I've got goosebumps just thinking about how.
So do I. Whenever I talk about it.
And then the fact, there really aren't many breweries who can go, we've got an animated series off the back of this as well. And then, like you say, to be able to immerse yourself with the beers, dude, it's such a cool and broad concept. And just talking to you now for the past 35 minutes, it's blown my mind as to how wide this can be. I tip my hat to you, sir. Well done. Well done.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, we're not at the finish line yet, but I'm hoping maybe when we have another chat in a year or two, I can talk about a Netflix production or something.
Dude, that'd be phenomenal. And I think it's so important for other breweries when you can see the benefit that this different arm to your brand can bring. It doesn't have to be the detective angle by any means. There are many, many routes. And like you wisely said, looking at the film industry, at the games industry, there's many categories in that you could dive into and be inspired by. But I hope this conversation has definitely inspired people to go, maybe we do need to be thinking a little bit broader or bring in another element to the brand, because clearly it works. You can find a different market. You can bring new people in. It inspires the experience pieces, dude. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Exactly. That's what it's all about.
So, okay, let's wrap this up then, Max, because we've touched on a lot here, bud. But I suppose if you had to direct a brewery, maybe they're looking to refresh or take the brand in a different direction. Maybe they're only just opening up the brewery. What would you say the first step is in finding that world of their own that they could really own?
I would probably say, I think just do what we did. I think if you have a weird hobby, or if you have like an interest and you think that, and you have a real passion for it, I think just try and either adopt that as your style of branding. You know, it could be anything from, if you're into D&D, you could do like a medieval themed beer. If you're really into football, you could do like a football themed brand. I think, because usually I think if someone has a particular hobby that they're really passionate about, there's at least a couple billion other people that probably have that exact same interest. And then I think just do a lot of research into the market, see what's working for other people, and then see if there's maybe elements of what they're doing that you can apply to your kind of concept. Because I think it's very easy to copy and paste other brands, because naturally, if it's working for someone, it'll probably work for you. Mm-hmm. But I think in the craft beer space that's growing, I mean, I feel like there's a new brewery every 2 days in the community, which is fantastic. But I think just finding your niche can be tricky. But I think if you have a passion outside of beer that can be applied to that, I think just really go for that. I think there's so many elements, like beer is in virtually every community. And I think we were very lucky by going down that film noir direction. But there's lots of other routes you can take. You could do a sci-fi themed beer if you're into things like, cyberpunk, or if you're into a lot of sci-fi TV shows. I mean, I don't know the legality of it, but maybe do a Star Wars beer.
Yeah. Well, Emperor's definitely got that one on lock, haven't they?
Yeah, 100%. But no, I think just use your passions outside of beer to find that niche. I think that's what really helped us, to be honest. And I think it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It may not work in the beginning, but I think if you really show drive and passion towards that, it will work out. I think hard work just pays off, no matter what the concept or what the idea. I think it's just all about just really proving the naysayers wrong, and just just take that leap of faith. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Sage words, my man. Sage words. And in fact, you're saying about taking inspiration from sci-fi. I sat down with my son and we watched Tron for the first time together just this weekend.
Oh, amazing.
How awesome would it be if someone embraced the Tron style neon lines around their can, like a bit of glow in the dark kind of print? Would be super wicked. And again, it's a wonderful touch point. People tie into it. So anyone listening, they can steal that one. Go on and just send me a can.
Yeah. I might trademark it after this call.
Yeah. Go on. Well, I said it first. It was live. We've got it recorded. It's fine. Max, if people want to see the very best of Lost in Town, if they want to keep up to date with what you're doing, naturally, if they want to get a copy of the comic book, if they want to try the beer, where can they go? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so if you want to follow us on socials, our Instagram handle is @LostInTownBrewery. If you guys want to try the beers at home, if you're not local to London, we are on lostintown.co.uk. And then if you go on our website as well, if you are in London, we have an interactive map where you can find where we're poured, served, and sold.
Fantastic. Max, once again, man, thank you so much. It's such an inspirational chat, and I love the idea.
Thank you so much, Tim. It was an absolute pleasure having a chat with you and getting to talk all things Lost in Town. I absolutely love doing it. So this has been a great opportunity.
Nice one, buddy. And everyone who's tuned in, listen now, listening in the future, as always, you rock. Stay tuned. We've got plenty of other fantastic guests coming up this year. Rock on. That's a wrap on this week's episode of Branding for Breweries. If you got something great from it, hit follow, like, and subscribe on your favorite streaming app. Or even better, leave a review, share it with your brewery pals, or get in touch, because I want to chat to you. Rock on!